Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And tonight, for the second time, we have an open line, so you are welcome to call us with any legal question that you may have. Now, I must give a disclaimer. If I'm unable to answer any of your questions directly, and if you're able to contact us later on, we will try to get the necessary experts to answer your questions more meaningfully and fully. Now, before we kick off, just by way of background, there's been a number of very interesting cases all over the country in an area that I particularly have an interest in, which is immigration, citizenship, and nationality. I'd like to start by discussing a decision of the Western Cape High Court approximately 2 weeks ago. So there, the court was faced with the following question. Are children born in South Africa of parents who are neither citizens nor permanent resident entitled to citizenship for their minor children? So the question that the court had to answer was, if a child is born in this country, his birth is registered, and he has lived all his life in the country and has turned 18, is that child entitled to citizenship in terms of the Citizenship Act? Now, previously, you could acquire citizenship by birth if your parents were citizens at the date of your birth or were permanent residents, permit holders. So this decision went a long way in giving expansion to the Citizenship Act. In fact, it now says that if you are born in the country, your birth was registered in the country, and you have never left the Republic, then you're entitled to citizenship when you turn 18. So this was a particular milestone, I would suggest. The question that doesn't seem to have been answered or indeed addressed is, what would the status of the parents have been on the date of your birth? So, for example, if one or other parent was illegal and you were born here, your birth was registered, you did not have citizenship of another country, you never traveled out of the country, would you be entitled to citizenship of South Africa? Indeed, a very interesting legal question, and as I say, a milestone with regard to that particular area of the law. The other is that you might be interested in knowing that the Zimbabwe exemption permits have now been reopened since last Friday, the 15th, for a further period of 4 years. However, if you were on a ZSP, which means a Zimbabwean special permit for the last 4 years, and this has been in place, in fact, since 2010, so this is the third extension of special permits for Zimbabweans, then you have a period only until the 30th of November to make application for an extension of the ZSP, which is known as the ZEP, Zimbabwe Exemption Permits. So the figures are that in the last, since 2010, an amount of 210,000 applicants had been received, applications had been received, and 198,000 had been approved. So this is not a regime open to any new permit seekers from Zimbabwe, but only those that have existing ZEPs. And there's a special dispensation and a special fee to be paid. An interesting question that arises from there is, one, are you entitled to permanent residence as a result of the ZEP or ZSP? The answer is no. Two, what do you have to fulfill in order to obtain a work visa if you're on the ZEP? Well, it's very simple. The ZEP now does away, as it did in the past, with all of the normal requirements for example, a work visa. In a work visa, a principal document would be that you obtain the recommendations from the Department of Labor. Now, this is a rigorous process if you normally want to employ a foreigner. And the Department of Labor hasn't really been handing out certificates saying that there's no one else in South Africa that is suitable to do the job in a general work visa that the applicant is applying for. But the ZEP does away with all of that, so you can actually just simply work with an employer's letter or contract. You can go to school and study with a simple letter from the school, so you don't have to provide things like a medical aid, which other students will have to apply for, will have to provide if they apply for a study visa. So there's a lot of relaxation of all of the requirements, the mandatory requirements of the Immigrations Act, including the fact that if you're starting a business, you do not have to go through the Department of Trade and Industry and obtain a recommendation from them that the business is viable and in the national interest. So you could simply go and register a company and start your own business if you were on the ZEP. As you can see, these are extremely generous concessions, and for good reason. The feeling is that once you are on the system, then there is at least a trace of who you are and where you work and what contributions you're making. For the other people that are not yet on the ZEP, well, it's either that you are deported and you go back, and there the Department of Home Affairs has really passed legislation by way of the Border Management Act to try and manage how people are repatriated to the countries of origin and how and when they would be re-allowed in. Now, it's common knowledge that a lot of people simply say that they walk across the border and they re-enter South Africa and then seek a refugee status, which is another area of the law that has potential to be changed. So there is a bill and a white paper, it used to be a white paper, open for comment by the members of the public. One of the things that the white paper on refugee reform is that there is an intention that you would be kept at refugee reception offices closer to the border until your application has been processed. So that's really just another way of saying that you will not be allowed into mainstream society, and in all probability will have to remain in a camp until your matter has been adjudicated. But you are reminded again that tonight is an open line and you could ask any question. Now, we urge you to take advantage of this, because any consultation with an attorney is going to cost you money. So you may have a matter in the small claims court, which has a jurisdiction of up to 15,000 rands. And you may want to know, what is the process there? How does it work? What claims can you bring? What happens when a claim is adjudicated in your favor? What kind of evidence you must lead? Who has the burden of proof? So all of these little interesting questions regarding matters that you may have in the small claims court. Alternatively, you may be in a dispute with your landlord. You have not been able to pay the rent, and the landlord has resorted to self-help, change the locks and put on chains, and you're unable to access your property. Recently there was a comment about some of the students unable to pay their rentals, which is part of the whole debacle regarding university fees. And they were actually locked out of their premises, and the companies had resorted to self-help. So where do you turn when you have issues of such a nature? I believe we have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
name is Juman.
I'm sorry,
Hello?
sir. Can I ask you to please turn down your TV because we're getting feedback and I can't hear you.
Okay. I'm just hearing your program, so I'll turn it down. Just hold on, I'll put it off.
Please.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, I put it off. Look, I'm just hearing Mr. Yusuf on the TV, and he's talking about Zimbabwe. What about these Pakistanis? I'll tell you why. My daughter is married to a Pakistani, and she's got 2 kids. And, he's just getting a visa all the time to stay here. Now, can you get a permanent residency in South Africa, in Durban?
Okay. So let me just tell you how permanent residents work. So the special dispensation is only for Lesotho and Zimbabwe. But as I said, they are excluded from the normal rules of the Immigrations Act. Now, in order to migrate from a temporary residence visa to permanent residence, irrespective of country of origin, could be Pakistan or anywhere else, the Act now says you've got to be married for 5 years. You see, before, if you were the father of a citizen, you could apply for permanent residence, but that has been removed. So there's been an amendment since 2014. Now you've got to wait out the period of 5 years from the date of the marriage and then apply for permanent residence. But until that happens...
Sorry, I just want to tell you, he's married for 7 years now.
So he shouldn't be refused. It's a very simple application. You make an online application with VFS, Visa Facilitation Services.
Just let me write it down, please. Just hold on. Visa?
VFS, they're on the internet, Visa Facilitation Services.
Okay.
And they have a checklist of what documents you require in order to apply for permanent residence permit.
Okay.
And you then fill out the documents and you go in, the applicant goes in, he pays a fee, and then the application is taken in and you are given a receipt.
Yeah.
And then you await the process. You await the adjudication process according to the Department of Home Affairs is a period of 8 months. So then you decide after 8 months, but you got to check up in between. If there's no answer, then what's your further steps against the department to try and elicit a response?
Okay.
So your son-in-law is perfectly entitled to go and apply for permanent residence.
Yeah, and he's got 2 kids. They're already registered, you see.
Yeah, they're registered as citizens because of the mother. The mother must be a South African citizen.
Yeah.
So the Citizenship Act says if one or other parent is a South African citizen, then you are a South African citizen by birth. But it is based on your descent, on your parent being a citizen.
Right.
Now the PR, permanent residence permit process is quite rigorous because it includes having to obtain a police clearance certificate from your country of origin.
Okay.
And I understand that from Pakistan you can't obtain that here. You actually have to have it from Pakistan itself.
Okay.
So that might delay the process somewhat.
Right.
And at all times, I urge you to keep the temporary residence visa alive and valid.
Okay.
And if it is to expire, you've got to do it 60 days before the expiry of the temporary residence visa.
Okay.
All right, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I don't think anything. Thank you very much, man.
You're welcome.
Okay, have a good evening.
You too. Thank you for your call. So there we have it, a question, very interesting question. I understand we have another caller on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, yes?
Yes, we can hear you. Please switch off your TV, sir.
Okay, I'll just switch the volume. switched off the volume of the TV.
Okay, just a reminder to all our viewers, if you're calling in, please switch off your TV because we're getting feedback in the studio. It's a live show and we can't hear you. Okay, caller, please go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. I came here on in a company called Visa, and apparently now I have a degree and a master's, and I don't know how to change it to the normal working visa.
So you came on a fraudulent visa.
No, I didn't come on a fraudulent visa. It's my spouse was here.
Spousal visa. Did you come on a spouse? So you're married to a South African citizen?
No, I'm married to someone who got critical skills visa.
Okay, so your wife is also on a temporary residence visa under the category critical skills.
Yes.
You have an accompanied spouse visa. You now want to change that condition to work. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a special dispensation in terms of Section 11 to change that condition to say accompany spouse and the right to work. Now, similar to the Zimbabwean exemption permits that we spoke about, ZEP, there's a discount of the requirements for you. So you don't have to fulfill a Department of Labor report, SAQA, etc., etc. You simply have to go with a letter of appointment or a contract, make application through VFS, Visa Facilitation Services, and take the application form in, which will be described as application for change of conditions. And then you present it to the department through VFS, you pay the fee, and then you await the outcome.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Again, have a look at the website. There's lots of other documents that you need to provide, medicals, radiologicals, etc. If they're older than 6 months, then they're too old to present with a new application.
Okay. So the act, do I need to get the act as well, or the VFS knows that?
Now, the VFS website has got a detailed description of the documents. You might need help from an expert regarding how to fill out the application form, because that's where you can go wrong. So just look out for the right kind of help.
All right. I don't know if I can ask where I can find it, or if we offer it in Johannesburg.
The best place to start will be from the Law Society of South Africa. They have a list of immigration specialist attorneys. They will tell you who you can speak to.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, viewers, time for a break. Please stay tuned and join us after the break and be ready with your questions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A reminder that you are tuned to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And tonight, in continuation of our initial effort to bring you an open line where you can engage with us, and we will try and assist you and attempt to answer some of your legal questions. And there's just so many different facets. We will not be able to cover every single angle, but as far as we can, we will try and assist you. Of interest to people might have been recently, in fact today's news, that there were a host of bogus doctors. A question that arises from that is, if you went to a bogus doctor and you were injured, and do you have a claim? And if you have a claim for medical negligence, who does that claim lie against? So if the bogus doctor was, for example, employed by a state hospital, your claim would lie against the state. A private hospital against a private hospital. But what if your local doctor employed a bogus doctor unknowingly, unwittingly, quite innocently, and you were treated by that doctor in your regular doctor's rooms? Where does your relief lie? And how do you get about having a claim for medical negligence? What is the standard of proof? Who and how will you employ an attorney to prosecute your claim? Now remember, these are very, very particular cases, and you have to prove negligence, and you probably have to get an expert on your side, and you probably are unable to employ the cost of an expert. So these are very interesting legal questions. Or you might have a dispute regarding a contract. You could enter into a contract, let's say, for purchase of let's say, a flak jacket, and you make payment to the seller, and the seller then says to you, your goods are on the way to you via the courier services. It never reaches you. Either he never sent it or it was stolen along the way. Now, who do you have recourse against? So again, very, very interesting legal questions. But you're welcome to call us with any legal question that you have on your mind. And remember, you are actually scoring, because if you had to consult with an attorney, you would have to pay that fee and then obtain legal advice. So as far as possible, let us try and assist you. So other interesting cases that have surfaced recently, you would have seen that the Supreme Court of Appeals had dismissed the claims of General Ntlemeza, who's now retired. But interestingly, the court said that the costs of the court case had to be borne by the general personally. Now, what does it really mean when you have to pay the costs out of your own pocket? We usually call that or refer to that as costs de bonus proprius. So in the normal litigation suit, if you're acting for a company or an institution, then you are a mere employee, and the court will not order you in your personal capacity to cover those costs. In his case, there was a clear indication that the court was displeased with how the matter had proceeded and had asked him to pay the costs personally. I think the same was with the ex-SABC head. So again, very interesting legal questions. But going forward, there were massive instances. I believe we have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead and remember to turn down your TV. Are you with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you. I would like to...
Sir, I cannot hear you. I don't know if you've got your TV set on or your radio. Please turn it down completely. Switch it off.
Okay. Yeah. I was saying this. That I have a SAP permit holder. Now, I have 3 children who were born in South Africa, all of them. Now, concerning what you're saying about the children born in South Africa, now I would like to know by when, I don't know if how can I say it? I'm allowed to go apply concerning the birth certificate.
Okay, so we're talking about citizenship and the case that was covered in the Western Cape High Court.
Yeah.
Okay, so there the court made it clear that on turning 18, so there were 4 or 5 applicants, and the court said when those children turn 18, they are entitled to citizenship. Remember, you only become an adult in South Africa on turning 18.
Correct.
So if those are major children born in the Republic,
Yeah.
have their births registered in terms of the Births and Registers Act,
Correct.
and have never traveled to another country and have no right to a passport of any other country, they will be granted citizenship in terms of that judgment.
Okay. And if you have your original passport from the original country, but they were born in South Africa, they never traveled, they never went out of South Africa.
So what you're saying is they were born in this country, but they are passport holders of another country.
Yeah, the original country of the parent.
Of the parents, yes. Well, that will be interesting because the court didn't make any comments on that. But it did say that if you have not acquired citizenship of another country, I think it was making provision for those class of citizens that absolutely had no other choice, had no other country to go to. It was kind of covering the area of statelessness. But the judgment didn't make that clear. I would suggest that you should try and find somebody to assist you, or alternatively go to the Department of Home Affairs and say, I understand that this is what this judgment says. Can you please assist me in applying for citizenship for these children that have become adult?
All right. Thank you. Then it has to be done only when the children turn 18 years old.
That's according to the judgment, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for teaching me.
You're welcome. So, I understand we have another caller. Caller, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you, sir?
Well, and you?
All right. I have a little bit of a housing issue.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. There's actually 4 of us that's been occupying our house for about 10 years now, and it's from a developer, and we have this. The case has gone to court, and but subsequently, there's 4 people that's under debt review, and now they want to start again with evictions.
Okay, so the two issues are different, right? Debt review is for people that are over indebted and cannot manage to pay all of their debts, and they seek counseling from a debt review counselor, and he draws up a payment plan and he gives it to all the creditors.
That's right.
Right. On the other hand, you are occupying premises for the last 10 years by virtue of what? Did you have a lease agreement with the developer? Or
No, what happened was that all of us had bonds and it was approved, but the developer took too long to register the houses. So, I think it was after a year that some of the people went under debt review and the banks cancelled the bond based on that.
Right, okay, so look, here the situation is that you're unable to meet your mortgage payments, and the bank has now acted and cancelled its mortgage, its loan to you. The bank is usually the owner of that premises because they give you the loan and they hold the premises or the property as security. So when you don't or unable to pay, I'm not talking about debt review now because that's a whole long process, and until it is exhausted, the bank can't proceed against you and cannot evict you. And the eviction process itself is quite laborious and intensive. The bank has to actually make application, 2 or 3 applications, obtain the necessary court orders, serve an application on the city council where the property is situated. The city council, who is entrusted with finding alternative accommodation, will give a report, and then that report is taken to the court depending on what they say, and the court then makes a final decision. So really what we're talking about is judicial oversight, and it is governed by the Prevention of Illegal Evictions. So judicial oversight in evicting people, it dissuades people from resorting to self-help, so people can't come in and just remove you without a court order. And if they do, you have a right to be reinstated. So there has to be a legal process sanctioned by the courts, with the judge having judicial oversight, simply because the Constitution says that everyone is entitled to shelter, but not at the expense of the lessor. So at some stage, or the owner of the property, at some stage the owner is going to say, you haven't paid, I'm now evicting you, and usually a period of 6 months has to pass.
Okay, I think this runs a little bit deeper than what I'm explaining. Okay, the houses doesn't belong to the bank. It belongs to the developer. All right?
But the bank gave you a loan to purchase that from the developer, no?
That was 10 years ago. So initially, that is where all the bonds was approved, and because the NHBRC didn't want to approve the houses because of structural defects. So they took a year in order to register the houses. But within that year, there's people that went on debt review because of their commitments that they couldn't maintain. In 2012, we were taken to court where the judge actually granted, and he said that that the developer and us needs to come to an agreement where maybe a lease where you could pay it over a period of time, and then they agreed, we agreed on it, and they never got back to us up until that a month ago, where they said that they are selling the company because they're being retrenched. So, and they're only giving us till December. It's not that we can't pay that because we are paying water and rates, and we're paying the electricity. It's not that we can't afford to pay the monthly installment as would it if it had to be with a bank. I don't even make sense.
It's difficult to follow what you're saying because I'm concerned that you're saying there's an agreement in place. If there's an agreement in place, that agreement has binding force. What area do you live in, and where did this occur?
This is in the Western Cape, and the developer in question is Cape Town Community Housing.
Okay, without giving any details of the other party, are the parties affected unable to pay for legal assistance?
I'm not too sure because it's basically about 5 families.
Yeah, you see, if they're already economically distressed and they're under debt review, they're quite entitled to approach the developer through the debt reviewer or through the debt counselor. Alternatively, seek help from the law schools. Now, the law schools have law clinics that are staffed by full-time attorneys, and it would be very interesting if they could take this to such an organization. Alternatively, the Legal Resources Center or Legal Aid, and see if they can't, on behalf of the occupiers, stroke tenants, stroke owners, liaise with the developer to see if they can't get a proper agreement in writing.
You know, we actually have done that, and the developer's adamant that he's just standing on that we've been staying here and we're not paying, and there's nothing else, and evictions is going to take place.
But you know, with respect, you can't just stay on and pay your levies and essential charges. I mean, the developer has put money in there, and he needs to recoup that. So you may want to reach some sort of settlement with him. But I mean, the facts are not at all clear because it's either he's the owner or the bank is the owner.
The developer is the owner.
So then you didn't pay the bank your monthly installments and you didn't pay the developer.
Okay. In 2012, we agreed to a monthly installment as if we had to take out a bond, for example, and pay it over 15 years. Then everything, we agreed on amount, and just about roughly over 2 years, we heard no correspondence from them up until.
But if there was, if there was an agreement to pay, you had to pay.
Yeah, but they never came forward because we put something on the table, and then after a year they said no, or I think it's just more than a year. They said no, it's not going to work.
Look, you also have the problem of prescription. If their claim is more than 3 years, then that part of the claim would have prescribed. So there are many angles to this, and I don't think I'd be able to justify a short answer. I urge you to find an attorney in your area. Phone the Law Society of the Western Cape. Ask them which attorneys specialize in property law evictions and go and see them. If there's 4 or 5 of you, you'd actually have a saving.
Okay.
All right? I'm sorry I couldn't help you more.
No.
Okay, time for a break. Please stay tuned and join us after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to the last segment of Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. Tonight you're invited to join us on the open line and pose any question or even make a contribution to the show if you wish. We've so far covered a couple of interesting questions. The last caller had an extremely complex matter, and we suggest that he looks for an attorney in his area and has a proper consultation regarding evictions. Back to the international arena. Just before the break, we were talking about our last show where I believe we have a caller on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Sir,
can you hear me?
I can, but I'll ask you to please turn off your television.
Yes, it's off.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I want us to find out. I've been here in South Africa more than 10 years, but I'm using a working permit. But right now, I already spent 5 years working in South Africa, but I want just to go in permanent residence. I don't know, is it a procedure I have to be more than 5 years, or 5 years is enough for me to have a working permit?
So the Immigration Act does allow you to move to permanent residence if you're on a work visa for a period of 5 years and more. And there's a number of things that you have to satisfy the department in that application. For example, that the employer has advertised the position and there's no one else available, and the permit is a permanent appointment. So the answer is yes. Again, it's a complex area of the law to apply for permanent residence from a work visa, but certainly the Act does provide for that. However, I must hasten to add that the Immigration Act, which was really a green paper, then a white paper, and it's now a bill, and it's being debated in Parliament, now says that you don't have an automatic right to migrate from a visa to permanent residence or citizenship. So they're changing that. They want you to prove that you are of some benefit to the country. You have some contribution to make. There is a national development plan that you fit in somewhere. So that is, I would submit, very discretionary. So the threshold is much more higher. Previously, from marriage, 5 years, you could move over. From work, 5 years, you could move over. However, the period doesn't apply to critical skills and people that have own business visas. They do not have to wait the 5 year. In your case, you can move over because you've been here for 5 years.
So I mean, I can apply for resident permanent.
That's right.
Okay, thank you, let's say.
You're welcome. I understand we have another call on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'd like to speak to. I'm under debt review, and sorry, I'm just switching off my phone.
Yes.
I'm under debt review, and I would like to know how I can finish it off.
Okay, so your debt review counselor will be able to give you a schedule. Now, what he does is he looks at all of your debts and he decides which he's going to settle immediately and which he's going to settle later. So
okay,
if you...
but my debt review counselor is no longer in the business.
Then you've got to find another debt review counselor.
Oh, okay. All right.
And let him take it over and let him liaise with your creditors in a meaningful manner so that you can try and settle with most of them. Now, you could even make lump sum payments. You know, some of them might be willing to write off the rest of the debt if you give a lump sum and forgive that debt, you see. And
Okay.
interestingly, let's say you had a judgment by them and you've paid the outstanding amounts, you are entitled to apply for a rescission of judgment so that you can go back to being credit worthy.
No, I didn't. I never had a judgment. But the bottom line is I must find a new debt counsellor.
Yeah, and I urge you to find somebody that is nationally known and has a good reputation. You do have debt counselors who sometimes take the fee and never make the payment to the creditor, and then you find you're in deeper trouble.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Have a good evening, eh?
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. A reminder to our viewers, if you want to pose a question in Afrikaans, we will try and assist you as far as possible. So please don't hold back if you don't have a good command of the English language. So we were talking about 2 weeks ago when the matter of the Rohingyas was covered on the show by the very able and competent advocate Shabna Mayat. Since then, there's been a lot of international pressure, a lot of protests, both locally and abroad, and we've seen people speaking on behalf of the regime and against the regime. In Pretoria last week, there was, I'll have to pause. I think we have another call on the line.
Hello, how are you, sir?
Fine, and you?
I'm okay.
How can I help you, sir?
No, I need to find out some things, ne?
Yes.
I got 2 daughters, and his mother he passed away.
Yes.
His mother is a South African, but I am coming from Malawi. Which way I can apply it?
Now, when the children were born, where's the results? Where were they born? There should be a birth notice. There should be a hospital record reflecting the mother's details. Where's that?
Yeah. No, I got everything.
So you can go to the Department of Home Affairs and say, these children are citizens because their mother was a citizen.
Yes, I tried to do that because I was taking the letter from social workers, but still that Home Affairs is still to refuse me.
Well, I suggest you go and see the head of that particular division of Home Affairs.
Yes.
And if you're still not given any help, and if you can afford to litigate, you should be able to take the department to court and get a mandamus or a high court order ordering them to register the children as South African citizens.
Which court I have to go, because I'm already go to nearby the township I'm there, but the court didn't get help or anything.
Then go and see the universities. They have legal aid clinics.
Okay.
Thank you for your
And
call.
now, a second question that I was already by Home Affairs Department, but the things is still coming alright. Where can I complain?
Well, there is a department hotline. If you're not getting help, you can go on the website and see how you can get hold of the minister.
Okay.
And then write her an email, and there is a call center number, and you can write them an email, and you can register your complaints.
Okay.
All right, I hope that answers your question. We have the last call on the line. Sir, please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Hello, yes.
I just want to ask you something.
Please go ahead.
You see, I'm here in South Africa 2005. It's like almost 13 years. Then after I met one local lady in 2010. So I married her. I married her like not even 2 years, 1.5 years. But I got kids too with her. So now at the moment I got a asylum seeker. So what happened? I was applying for TRP, temporary residence permit. Then the first time, like recently, like 2 weeks back, it was rejected. So then after that, they said I must apply again to the General Director of Home Affairs, like review.
No,
I
yeah,
did it.
you have 10 days. It'll give you notice that you have 10 days. If you disagree with the decision, within 10 days you must file a review with the Director General. But what was the reasons for rejection? Did they say asylum seekers are not able to apply for visas in terms of the Immigration Act? Is that the reason?
Yeah, there's a reason. They show the reason, but I do have my legal advisor who also advised, because first time he had this, like the whole file was like more than 150 pages on that. The first time I went to DSS, they said it's like we cannot apply. Then after that, the first application, appointment was been I never made to apply. And after next application I did, because of that, my legal advisor, like lawyer, he was giving the paper from the court on the Eastern Cape.
So
now,
did you get a High Court order that said that you can apply as an asylum seeker, cross over, abandon the asylum seeker's permit, and apply in terms of the Immigration Act? Did you go to court on that?
Yes, sir. And after that went to those Home Office, and it came back like 20 days time, the result. They also have an act, like they say that I cannot do this. And after that, I did apply again today. That's which one, I did apply to the review for 10 days.
Yeah, no.
For the director.
Yes, I understand. So the review process will take some time now. But if they rejected it on the basis that you couldn't move from asylum seeker to temporary residence, which is actually the law right now, but you had a court order allowing you to apply, which is quite interesting. I do know that such a matter is on review to the High Court. So on what basis your legal advisor applied for a review would be very interesting. But let's see what the department says. Are they rejecting it again, or are they accepting it this time? And you do have a hierarchy of appeals and reviews. So from the Director General, if he refuses, in terms of Section 8 of the Act, you are entitled to approach the Minister. If the Minister refuses for reasons that are not sound and logical and meet the requirements of PAJA, which is the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, then you're entitled to go to court and apply for a judicial review. But it's interesting to say you actually have a High Court order ordering them to actually take the application and to process it.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. But because both children are citizens of South Africa, because their mother is South African.
Yes, I understand that. But the question is then, does that entitle you in terms of present legislation to apply for permanent residence? Being the father of citizens, that used to be the position, it's not the position. Does it entitle you to apply for temporary residence visa in terms of the Immigration Act? It used to be the position, it's not the present position. But I think you have an interesting legal case. All right? Thank you for your call. I'm sorry we've run out of time. Right, that's it. That's the end of our show, and thank you for joining us and making it really interesting with all of your questions. And I look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.